If you ever tried renting in a big city, you know it's not easy. When I went to London for the first time and I was trying to find an apartment to rent, wow, I was not prepared for the month-long process of terror that is flat hunting in London.
Another day, another flat viewing.
But I've been through it twice, and the last time was apparently the worst time in history to be apartment hunting in London. So yeah, if you're planning on moving to London, or you already live there and you're going apartment hunting again or for the first time, then this video is perfect for you. And speaking of learning new things, I'm always interested in learning something new, which is one of the many reasons why I love Brilliant.org. Now, Brilliant is the best way to learn math, science, and computer science interactively. I've recently been taking a course on the topic of scientific thinking, and I've been learning all about the physics behind everyday objects and things, like why skyscrapers don't just fall over and how solar panels and solar power actually work.
Wait, what? 0.01%. That's crazy.
This has been so fun and enjoyable to learn about. I highly recommend you try either this course or just any of the other thousands of courses and lessons that Brilliant has to offer. Brilliant adds new lessons every single month, and to try Brilliant for free for a full 30 days, just visit brilliant.org/macerly or click the link in the description box. And the first 200 of you will get 20% off Brilliant's annual premium subscription. Now let's begin to talk about everything I wish I knew before I started hunting in London. I brought up my computer because there is a lot to go through today. There's a lot of documents that you need to be thinking about. So first, your salary, or the combined salary of you and your flatmate or you and your partner, needs to be 2.5 times the annual rent. If you don't have a salary, for example, if you are a student, you can also have a guarantor. This is quite common, but just keep in mind that you need to pay 6 months upfront if you have a guarantor. You also need to make sure that you have documents to prove the following things: your ability to live in the UK, your identity, your employment status or student status, and your salary. So be that a offer from your job where it states your salary or previous tax returns. When you got all that ready, there's only one more thing you need to do before you're ready to start apartment hunting, and that is to brace yourself. If you ask anyone who's gone through this before, especially after COVID, apartment hunting in London is rough. It's gonna be tough. You're gonna have to be super proactive, super quick. Don't let setbacks affect you personally, because if your flat hunt is anything like mine was, there's gonna be a few of those. Moving on to step number 1, find a neighborhood. I asked you guys on Instagram for questions about moving to London, like what you wanted to know, and so many of you asked for recommendations on how to find a neighborhood. So we're gonna go through a few tips that I find super helpful. And I've moved tons around in London while I've been living here. I've moved 4 times and I've lived in 4-ish different neighborhoods. So I have a few tips. So first, if you don't already live in London or you haven't been here before, you need to know that London is ridiculously massive. There are, what, like 11 million people here. So some helpful tips to find the borough and neighborhood that you like is to first look at where you go to work or where you go to uni. You could try starting by looking at those areas. What borough is it in? Maybe find some cute neighborhoods in that borough that you like. A nice rule of thumb is also that the further out in terms of zones that you go, the cheaper your rent per week will essentially be. This is a map of the average rent for a 1-room in London. Zone 1 is quite expensive, and then zone 2 gets less expensive. Zone 3, zone 4, zone 5, yeah, you get the thing. If you happen to go to uni in central London, so zone 1 for example, you might not be able to afford rent there. So find out what tube or tube lines go from there, and then look through the different stations and neighborhoods that you have along that tube line. For example, let's say you work in Notting Hill, one of the most expensive places to live in London. Instead of living there, you might actually go look at what line goes to Notting Hill Gate, so that's Central Line and a few others. But if you look at the Central Line, then you'll see that White City is just like 2-3 stops away. White City is definitely cheaper than living in Notting Hill, so it'll take you like 5 minutes to commute, but you're still saving a lot of money. One of the best things about London is that it's so diverse. I find that every neighborhood has almost a different identity. Hoxton and Shoreditch is very trendy, very urban. Chelsea and Kensington is very posh. So when you try to find a neighborhood, it gives you an idea to look at yourself and think, what kind of things do I want to have in my close neighborhood? There might be a lot more expensive stores in Chelsea and in Kensington, and in Shoreditch and in Hoxton there are a lot more vintage shops. There are more independent shops also in terms of restaurants and cafes and that sort of thing. I also want to say that some neighborhoods really don't have much of a personality at all. Like, I've lived in Bloomsbury and I would say it's very standard. If you're able to, I would definitely try to do a day in each London neighborhood. However, if you don't live in London or you can't do that, you live too far away, going onto Instagram and searching for the neighborhoods could also give you a good indication of what's going on in the neighborhood and what kind of vibe it is there. And because there's so much competition in London to rent, I would probably start with 5 to 6 neighborhoods to start looking in. But honestly, the more the better. When we were apartment hunting for this flat, I think we had 14 areas in the end that we were looking at because we just couldn't find anything. But yeah, you might end up being luckier than we were. Step number 2, find something you like. I would advise that you start looking for flats around 1.5 months in advance of your moving date. You might find that some of the flats are supposed to be moved into a week from the day you're looking, but some of them will be listed a bit later. And it's also good to familiarize yourself a bit with the market, what the prices are currently, how quickly things are going, etc, etc. So websites that I recommend to find flats are Rightmove and Zoopla. And if you're interested in renting just a room, I would recommend Spare Room. A lot of my friends have found flatmates through this, but also there's some listings about like sharing a room on Rightmove and Zoopla as well. And please guys, be super careful with Facebook groups. I personally know a girl who got scammed for her entire deposit. That's like 2,000 something pounds. And if you're a student, there's a really great website for all the public unis in London called University of London Halls. There's also dorms available through your university site. Another way to find apartments is to go into the different agencies' websites and search from there. Knight Frank, Portico, Seville's, Foxton's, yeah, there's a lot of them. At this point in the flat hunt, it's really important to take into account what you actually want. Wood floors, natural lighting, 2 bathrooms, a dishwasher. I find that when flat hunting in London, you'll never tick all the boxes, so it could be an idea to look at your list and see what is more important of your priorities and what is less important. And finally, know your budget. How much can you actually afford to pay in rent? What is the max you can go up to? Also know that sadly, we're in a time where it's super competitive to rent in London. So what is actually advertised on all the websites might be less than what the apartment will end up going for, because bidding wars are just becoming so common. Step number 3, arranging a viewing. This is gonna be a quick one because arranging a viewing isn't really that hard. I'm just gonna take you through how it works. So first, when you're arranging a viewing, the best way to do it honestly is just do it through the Rightmove website or the Spare Room website. Also know that you should not pay anything before you view a flat. That's not legal. So after you inquire to view a flat, you will either not hear back because they're so busy. This definitely happened to me a couple of times. Or what could also happen is that the agent will call you back. They always call, they never email, they always call. And they will basically add you into the database that they have. They will ask for your salary, your name, you know, what you're looking for, what areas you're looking in. Okay. Also, what I found at least is that they often try to push you either to increase your budget or to look for different things or different neighborhoods. When you're on the phone with them, they'll probably also tell you the time and place you're gonna have your viewing. Most of the time, just ask for your viewing like ASAP, so same day or maybe day after in the morning, because flats go like this. So it's best if you just see it immediately and take it off the market. But when you're at the viewing, get a feel of the immediate neighborhood outside. What is it facing? What are the neighbors kind of like? Also, when you're inside, look for mold, look for damp, check the windows, see if they're double glazed or single glazed. You can also ask for if there's a boiler. You'll probably have like 10-15 minutes to do this. Go super quick. Sometimes you even have to do this with other people. I've had viewings and I think like 2-3 people at the same time. Step number 4, make an offer. Wow, was I not prepared for the process of offers when apartment hunting in London. It's a mess. Right after you view the property, if you like the place, you call the agent back and then they have an offer form that they, you know, go through and they'll ask you tons of questions. You have to say what rent you want to pay, your contact information. This is also where you request any changes to the property. So if there's mold, you say you want the mold removed, walls painted, curtains fixed. And if you want any furniture removed so you can bring in your own, this is also where you state that. And you want to make sure that you keep your demands super clear, because this is the only opportunity you have to make demands. And you know, if the agent messes these up or you're not clear enough, you won't get your demands fulfilled basically. I had this issue. We were recently flat hunting and we ended up losing the flat over it. So definitely make your demands super clear. And once you put in your offer, we're ready for step 5, bidding wars. Yes, bidding wars exist on rental properties. Welcome to London. Out of the 5 properties that I offered for in London, I was in bidding wars for all of them. Yes, 5 out of 5. It isn't always the case. In my previous flat that we rented during the pandemic and lockdown, there was no bidding war. They were almost happy to have us in the flat and make an offer. Bidding wars happen in more popular areas in more popular times. And I think the popular times to find new flats are from April to like October. So what happens in a bidding war? When you put in a bid for a property, you should ask the agent if there have been any other offers, and in that case, how how many. This is because there are a few things, if there's bidding war, that you can do to make your offer more attractive so the landlord ends up choosing you. You can ask for a longer tenancy. You can also pay more upfront. So let's say 6 months upfront. Some people even do 12 months upfront. If you have furniture demands, you can also offer to replace them yourself. Another thing I've seen people do is just pay for the landlord's new furniture. So if you want to trade out the table, you say, I'll buy you a new table, and then you use it while you're there, and then just leave it when you leave the property. And the final thing you can do is bid above the asking price. I hate to give this as advice because I wish we live in the world where it wasn't the case that you had to bid over the asking price. It just fuels the issue that rental prices are going up and up and up. Having been in 5 bidding wars, I noticed that the only way that I was going to get a flat in the end, and we looked at 15 or like 14 areas, so it wasn't that we just wanted to live in one neighborhood. It was just the case that we couldn't get a flat because every time we'd bid something, we'd bid asking price, and people would come in and they would bid £50 over and they would get the flat. I think at some point we just realized that the only way we were actually going to live somewhere in London was to bid above asking price. How much above asking price you bid really varies. I've seen anything from like £50 to £500 a month. And finally, after you put in your offer with the agent, what's either going to happen is that they say best and final, we'll call you and let you know if you won the bidding round or if you didn't, or they'll give everything to the landlord and then they'll call you back and they'll say, do you have a better offer, because currently it's looking like you're not going to win the property. I actually hated when they did that latter thing because, you know, it just fueled the problem. So if the other person had bid over, then I had to bid over, and then they would call the first person again and they would bid over. It would just become almost like putting fuel in the fire, you know? But that happened a few times and it wasn't really nice. Yeah, I'm just sharing my experience basically. Offer decision. There's 2 outcomes of a bidding war, obviously. The first one is that you're not accepted. So in that case, start over and go back to step 2. Or if your offer is accepted, there is a few things that happen. You will pay a holding deposit, which is 1 week's worth of rent-ish. Mine was £466. I recommend you pay this as soon as possible because this is what makes the agent take the property off the market. Until you've paid this, people will continue to read the property and put in offers, so just pay this as soon as possible. And then you move into the final process, which is the pre-move-in. The pre-move-in process can take anything from 3 days to 2 weeks. Honestly, it depends a bit on bank transfer times, how fast you are to provide documents. What happens in this process is that you first of all select your final move-in date, so what date you're going to move into the property. They run tons of checks on you, so credit checks, background checks. This is also the point when you get a contract and you have to sign it. I would suggest you read very thoroughly through this contract. It's probably going to be a long one, 50+ pages, but it's going to say a lot of things that you will need to do when you live in the property. So some of those things that I had in the previous contract I remember were like you have to clean or descale the shower head every 6 months. So we made sure that we did that so we didn't have to lose any of our deposit. And there's also going to be a few things you have to pay for in this point in the process. So you've already paid the holding deposit. You're also going to have to pay a proper deposit, which is going to be, I think, between 4 and 6 weeks of the rent. And you're also going to have to pay rent. That is your first month or your first 2 months or your first 6 months, depending on what is in your contract. I've always done 6 months, but that also because I am a foreigner, I'm not British, and it was just easier to do 6 months up front. And my final and super important piece of advice here is that if you are an international student, you need to make sure that you have 2 weeks at least before your move-in date from when you pay or all the money that you need in a UK bank account. Because what can happen, and what literally made me homeless for a week having to live with friends and relatives in London, was that you won't get the keys before the payment is received at the landlord's account. Even though you've sent the payment, it could take up to 2 weeks to go from an international account to a UK account. And after all that's done, you move in. Okay, that was it for this video. I hope it was educational and useful for you if you're planning on moving to London and maybe just interested in how the London rental market works. I will see you all in my next video. Bye guys!